Good start. Good start to the Turkish Grand Prix. Apologies for that, guys. Appreciate you guys sticking around. Oh my goodness, what is happening? That is my hand. That is me. Oh, we're there. We're finally there. Thank goodness for that. Um, right. What else have I got to do? This is not the live stream, so I can't see any of the chat now. You guys might be just chatting about what a moron I am. Perfectly reasonable. Let me get the chat up for myself. Bang. We're there. Hopefully, we're good. What a time to be alive. Oh, but we have got new stuff on the stream, hence why it is an absolute shambles. I tested it yesterday. Did it work yesterday? Like a dream. Does it work now when I need it to? Absolutely not. That is how technology works for me. But I hope you guys are well. Hope you're ready for the Turkish Grand Prix. Thank you for the like on the stream. Don't deserve it. Don't deserve that. But if you would leave a like, that would be lovely. Let's talk Turkey because we've had two free practices so far. We're obviously going into tomorrow. There's actually quite a few talking points with 7 races left to go. A couple of videos came out on the channel this week. One of them doing really well, actually. The Max Verstappen Honda engine one. Thank you guys so much for all your support on that. I'm glad that that was something you resonated with and enjoyed. Let me pop this chat there so I can actually see who's about and who is tuning in for the Turkish pre-race preamble. Again, I have to say thank you guys so much. We're continuing to grow. As you know, every single penny that I make from this goes back in, and we've got ourselves a stream deck. Can I get it high enough that you can see? Oh, no, I can't get it high enough that you can see. Oh my God. We have got a stream deck, so now I don't have to like look for my mouse every time I want to change anything. We can now actually look like semi-professional, and I've got some buttons to press now, so it's very lovely. I'm so grateful to all of you for all of your support, watching the videos, and just being part of the channel is absolutely 100% the best thing you can do to support me, support the channel, and just hopefully bring you continually better content. Slowly but surely, better content. Let's talk Turkey though. And obviously, this is the Turkish Grand Prix track. Actually, one of the ones that I don't mind too much. I quite like the Turkish Grand Prix track. I think it has its, flair moments, especially that second sector. I don't know whether it's just me on the game, but I really like that second sector in the Turkish Grand Prix. So I'm looking forward to hopefully what will be a good race over the course of this weekend. Let's talk about free practice first and sort of talk about the track because obviously it looks like it's finally rubbered in. If you guys didn't watch last year's race, it was pretty funny in that it was a brand new track. They had relayed a lot of the tarmac on the track and it was literally described as an ice rink. So loads and loads of drivers had troubles last year actually getting the car around the track, which was a little bit of a pain when you're trying to go at 200 miles an hour. But it was like an ice rink last year, and it seems like it's finally rubbered in fully now. It looks like finally we've got a good enough track that it is Formula One ready, and we're going to see some good lap times over the course of the weekend. Well, I say hopefully we'll see some good lap times because we never know. Apparently it could rain tomorrow or Sunday as well. Although the sort of rain forecast seems to flip-flop backwards and forwards between, yeah, it's definitely going to rain to absolutely no rain whatsoever. So we'll see whether or not it rains over the course of the weekend. But at least the track has rubbered in enough that even if it does rain, we might still be able to race. I think last year, if it would have rained during the Turkish Grand Prix, we probably would have just had to call it because it was already so slippery that it just would not have worked. Ooh, I don't know if my chat is working. We'll see. I don't know if the chat's working, so I apologize if you guys are flowing messages in, but I can't see any of them at this moment in time. I'll have a little look at that in a second. FP2. we also saw loads and loads of traffic already. And this has become quite a common theme in Formula One and Formula One races recently, is that we just see traffic. We just see loads and loads of traffic, especially towards the end of qualifying. And now, I know this was quite a common thing, or it has been quite a common thing in Formula One generally, but it seems like this season is like to another level because these cars can't follow another car through corners at all. Like a lot of these cars, the aerodynamicists have done such a good job that they can't actually follow behind another car when they don't have the aero help. And basically, what that's led to is the fact that all of these cars need a good chunk of space before they can get an actual fast lap going. And therefore, we're looking at loads of traffic throughout all of the sessions. Even in FP2, we had a massive line of cars. What was it? Stroll and Ocon, I think, possibly. And then Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton had to go round the outside into turn 4 because they were trying to do a lap. Like, we saw already in free practice a big chain of cars. And I think that's going to be something that we're going to see on Saturday again. I'd love to know your opinions on that. Do you think, like, the FIA needs to stamp down on this? Because there's a couple of times this season we've seen drivers miss out on being able to do a final lap purely and simply because all the cars in front of them have kind of screwed them out of time. Like, there's no way that realistically your outlap should take like 3 minutes, but if you join the back of a traffic jam, there's nothing you can really do. So I'd love to know what you guys thought. We also had a Gasly spin in FP2. Now, he didn't hit the wall or anything like that, and will be fine moving into tomorrow. But another little Gasly spin that maybe just breeds that inkling of doubt for whether or not Gasly is going to hold on to his place in the Drivers' Championship. Now, I'm going to talk about the Drivers' Championship in a minute, but yeah, that Gasly spin just didn't fill me with hope. And I know that, you know, you can spin on a Friday and have an absolutely phenomenal weekend, but it was just a little bit of an inkling as to maybe Gasly struggling a little bit more in that AlphaTauri as the season seems to have progressed. And then also in FP2, if you haven't seen it, a wonderful Kimi Raikkonen, like classic Kimi Raikkonen, like if you want a few clips which just summarize Kimi Raikkonen and him in Formula One, I think this is it. So his water system started leaking in his helmet. So effectively, I think he just ripped it out of the helmet and just destroyed basically the system. But then because he'd done that, it then started to leak down near his feet and into his boots. And the radio messages between him and the engineers are just absolutely exquisite. He complains about the water being in his shoes. They say, well, I think the pump's been turned off. And he's like, yeah, I turned it off because it was leaking in my helmet. And then he says, how on earth can we not get this right? It's the simplest thing in the car and we can't even get that right. Like, Kimi seems frustrated at Alfa Romeo, and he's probably fairly happy that he's only got 7 races left, because I think it's just going to come to a 4 where, like, last race of the season, he's just like, Alpha, how on earth you got all of these things wrong over the course of the season? It's been travesty after travesty. I can't even get a drink in the car, for goodness sake. And it was just classic Kimi Raikkonen. Well worth a watch if you haven't seen it already. Let's delve into the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship, though, because, you know, that's where we're really talking game at this moment in time in the season. And we are coming towards the pinnacle of the season. We've got 7 races left to go and lots of talking points, to be fair. Like, usually at this point in the season, especially if you're thinking the past few seasons, Hamilton's kind of already won the World Championship. I know obviously last year in Turkey was when he summarised his World Championship win. But it looks like, you know, at this point in the season, usually, you know, we kind of have a real divide between the first, second, third, fourth teams. And then there's maybe like a battle going on for like 6th in the Drivers' Championship or like 7th in the Constructors' Championship. There's something like that. Like, usually it doesn't go all the way down to the end of the season, especially right at the top. But this season, Hamilton and Verstappen, what a championship we've got on our lines. 2 points between them, and it could go either way. Like, I keep flip-flopping, and people keep asking me in the comments, like, who do you think? And I honestly just keep moving backwards and forwards. There's so many pros and cons to both of these drivers this year and over the course of their career so far, and whether or not they're going to move up into that championship win this season. It's just, for me, it's impossible to tell. But I would absolutely love to know your guys' opinions. Who do you think is going to win out of Hamilton and Verstappen? Like, which one of those is going to be able to edge it out and get those, 2 or 3 points it might end up being? Because there's only 2 points at this moment in time that separates Hamilton in first from Verstappen in second. It could be the same as we move further in towards the season. Then we've got third place, where we've got 3 drivers battling it out in there. We've got Bottas, Norris, and Perez. And if Norris would have won in the Russian Grand Prix, he'd have been right up in amongst it. Like, Bottas has got a tiny bit more of a lead now, and I think it's going to be really, really tough for Lando Norris to catch up to Bottas in third, especially with Perez. You'd imagine Perez is now a little bit more comfortable in this Red Bull. I know he's had sort of 50-50 races throughout the season. Sometimes he looks very, very comfortable. Sometimes he looks like absolutely has no idea what the car is doing. But I think Perez is going to take a little bit of a step forward as well this year. So it's going to be really tough for Lando Norris if he's going to hold on to that third place. And let's not really, beat around the bush. Even if he finishes 5th, he's going to finish 5th by probably a little bit of a margin. He's done really well so far this season, been outstanding in terms of his driving style this season, and by far and away is the driver of the season so far. And if he continues that form, will easily be driver of the season by the end. I can't believe Lando Norris is still in the battle for third place, especially considering how fast the Mercedes and the Red Bulls have been this year. Just baffling how good he has been. Hamilton, obviously, though, taking a 10-place penalty does give Lando Norris, Bottas, Perez an opportunity to maybe grab a few more points than they usually would. So Hamilton has to take a 10-place penalty. He's dropping it down 10 places because he's changing his engine for this weekend in Turkey. So when it comes to Hamilton, even if he gets pole position, which I'm doubtful if he will do. I think he'll be in and around it. He'll be top 3 definitely. So he could be starting anywhere between 11th and 13th, and that puts him in that really awkward midfieldy battle where he's going to probably have to get past the Alpines. He's going to have to get past the McLarens. He's going to have to get past possibly the AlphaTauri of Gasly, maybe even an Aston Martin in Vettel. He's going to have that little mix of drivers to try and get past, and it's going to be awkward for him. We saw last time that Max Verstappen, hit roadblocks occasionally in the race. Yes, in the end, it managed to go massively his way, and he finished in second place, which was mind-boggling. But, he hit roadblocks occasionally throughout the race, and he hit sort of drivers that cause you that little bit of an issue. And I think Hamilton might have the same sort of thing, starting anywhere between sort of, as I said, 11th, 13th, 14th, 15th. I think, he's going to hit those drivers, a Vettel, an Alonso, a Gasly, a Leclerc, or a Sainz, someone like that, that's going to cause him some real issues. So it's an opportunity for Bottas, Norris, Perez, even, Sainz, Leclerc, Ricciardo, if you want to go that far down, to pick up quite a considerable amount of points. And possibly, get themselves a podium position for the season. I saw a stat the other day that within the top 10, everybody has finished on the podium apart from Alonso. And actually within the top 12, right? Within the top 12 all the way down to Vettel, everybody has got a podium at least this season apart from Alonso. So maybe, with Hamilton at the back or towards the back, could Alonso see this as an opportunity to, continue his form of keeping Hamilton behind him? We think back to Hungary and the defensive performance that he put in there. That was absolutely phenomenal from Alonso at that point. So whether or not Alonso could maybe see this as an opportunity to get himself a podium, possibly. I'll say hello to everybody in the chat. Hello, Manev, Mia, nice to see you. Want Lewis to win, but unfortunately think Max will win. I'm so flipped. I think Max, on the whole, I think I'd prefer Max to win this season, but mainly just because I'd like a little bit of a mix-up from what we've seen regularly throughout the season. Hello, Mallory, how we doing? Missed the first few minutes before I go into a meeting. I mean, I feel like the meeting is probably much more important than what I have to say on Formula One. And Sally as well. How we doing? You all right? How are we? At least the chat is working. That's good. We had a little bit of a hiccup at the beginning. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Let's also sort of continue on down the field. So yeah, Hamilton has got a penalty. Sainz has also got a penalty this time around. He's going to be starting from the back of the grid. He's taking a full power unit change. So we're looking at Carlos Sainz being that driver in and amongst it that is going to be possibly the one that's starting from the back of the grid, having a little bit of a trickier time, and could lose out on points to those in and around him. You know, Carlos Sainz just managed to get in front of Leclerc in terms of the Drivers' Championship, all the way up there in sixth. And now, can he, Ricciardo possibly grab some points, get in front of him? Leclerc possibly take that first place in terms of the two Ferrari drivers. Possibly even, Perez looking at Carlos Sainz as a bit of an issue behind him is going to be quite thankful that Carlos Sainz is going to be starting from the back of the grid. So Carlos Sainz taking that engine penalty and that power unit penalty again opens the door for maybe another driver, a Ricciardo, a Gasly, an Alonso, and Ocon to start looking towards those top 5 spots, and seeing, well, if I can finish in the top 5 because Hamilton and Sainz are not going to be in and amongst it, not going to be battling for it. Maybe Perez or Verstappen has an off day, or Ricciardo's not quite in and amongst it either. They're going to be thinking, "Ooh, top 5 finish is something that I'd very, very much like to have on my CV," especially this year where it's been up and down and everybody is so close in terms of the points so far. And then obviously last year's pole position sitter, Lance Stroll, is having a bit of a nothing season. I was sort of looking at his stats the other day just because he was on pole last year in Turkey, and we all sort of were stunned to see it, and maybe we were thinking, Racing Point, Sergio Perez won a race as well, so we were like, oh, Aston Martin coming into next year, are they going to be something new, something fresh? And I thought personally, maybe Aston Martin could be up and amongst it with the Ferraris and McLarens. Hasn't gone this way this season, and I think Lance Stroll is sort of the one driver you can look at, because Vettel wasn't there last year, but Lance Stroll is on half the points that he was last season at this stage in the season, and is really struggling down in 13th and continually keeps hitting his teammate. Like, you just can't excuse that. I know he's trying to keep Vettel behind him and maybe catch up to Vettel in terms of the Drivers' Championship. He's only 11 points behind, and that is a reasonable amount that he can make up. But I just don't see Aston Martin finishing in the points. Like, if you told me to pick my top 10, I don't think either of the Aston Martin drivers would be in there at this point in the season. And, they're not in there in terms of the Drivers' Championship either. So I think it's going to be a real struggle for Aston Martin for the rest of the season to even pick up points. Mainly because Alpine and McLaren and Ferrari just look so incredibly good. Like, I've even written in my notes here, Alpine just look great at this moment in time. Like, honestly, I think Alpine have come out of nowhere, really. They had a very sort of mixed start to the season. Ocon had a really good start to the season, then completely dropped off until he got his chassis change. Alonso took him a few races to get back into the rhythm of things, and then was continually fighting for points, but wasn't, in and amongst it for like 5th or 6th or 7th place, where the real big points start to be able to get grabbed by the teams. It was like 1 point here or there, maybe like 2 points, 1.2 points, and then sort of Hungary came around, I guess, for Alpine, and since then they've been really, really good. I know Ocon, obviously that 25 points massively inflates his points tally for the season. He's got 25 points in one race and 20 points across the whole rest of the season. But sometimes you need that to just inflate your points. You could say the same with Daniel Ricciardo, right? He'd have 70 points if it wasn't for that 25 in Italy, and just absolutely boosts him in and amongst that battle. Let's sort of move away from Stroll. And actually, I'm going to talk about Daniel Ricciardo, because I'd love to know your guys' thoughts on whether Daniel Ricciardo can catch either of the Ferrari drivers. As I said, Carlos Sainz starting from the back of the grid on Sunday. Charles Leclerc looking actually really quick, to be fair. But Daniel Ricciardo has now put himself in and amongst the conversation. 9 points off Leclerc. If you'd have told me during the mid-season break that Daniel Ricciardo was going to catch either of the Ferraris, I probably wouldn't have believed you, because I have sung the praises of the Ferrari drivers this season. I think Leclerc has been really, really good. I think Sainz has possibly been even better than that, just because he is in a new team and has had to learn a brand new car whilst maintaining this really high standard of driving that he does have for himself. And Daniel Ricciardo, I have talked about being a little bit disappointing. I've talked about Daniel Ricciardo not being the driver that I expected him to be at McLaren. I've talked about Daniel Ricciardo, really struggling when it comes to McLaren as well. So if you told me that he'd be 9 points off and possibly, going into the last 6 races, like he could easily be in front of Leclerc by the end of the season. It would just take Leclerc having one mistake or one issue during qualifying or the race for Ricciardo to make up that 9 points. Ricciardo would have to have a good finish, don't get me wrong, but 9 points is not an insurmountable amount in one race. And therefore, Ricciardo could find himself in and amongst the Ferrari drivers with 6 races to go, with a McLaren that looks incredibly good, and has looked really, really good under Lando Norris since the summer break. Like, we're thinking about Spa, where Lando Norris probably should have gone on to win that race, because I think he could have got pole if he wouldn't have hit into the wall. We've also got, what was it, Zandvoort, not McLaren's track, to be fair. Didn't have a great weekend, but still, Lando Norris picked up a point. Then we're looking at Russia, and Lando Norris was absolutely brilliant. Should have gone on to win that race. Obviously, the rain then causes him an issue. So we could be looking at Lando Norris in so many more points than he has right now. But also, Ricciardo has come to life a little bit. That win in Italy has really boosted his confidence, I think, and really boosted, obviously, his opportunities for the end of this season. So, a McLaren team that looks a bit resurrected, a Ferrari team that is very flip-floppy. They have good weekends and bad weekends, and unfortunately, there's been a few more bad than good recently, from my opinion. But yeah, I'm just not sure if Ricciardo can catch the Ferraris, because I don't want to see myself as wrong. So because earlier on in the season, as I said, singing the praises of Ferrari, thought Ricciardo, McLaren didn't really mesh together well, but Ricciardo just shows maybe that like expertise he's got in Formula One, that consistency that he's got in Formula One, that he's been able to keep himself in the conversation and is still really, really close to the Ferraris, considering, as I said, by most standards, he's had a pretty poor season. But he could still finish ahead of both of the Ferraris and, finish in 6th place in the Drivers' Championship, which is not a bad return in your first sort of drive for McLaren in a season where they are on the up. We'll just have to wait and see. And then there's that little group underneath as well. Sort of the Alonso, Ocon, Gasly, Vettel. Now, as I said, I think Alpine are looking really, really good at this moment in time. I can't see anyone getting anywhere close to Alpine in terms of the 8 cars behind Ocon. I think Ocon's 10-point gap and Alonso's gap from Ocon being 13 points, that is insurmountable to me. I don't think, Vettel, Stroll, Tsunoda's going to get anywhere close to that by the end of the season. Like Vettel, even if you double Vettel's points, is only 4 ahead of Gasly. So I just don't think they're going to get anywhere close to that, in my own opinion. But Gasly on 66 and Alonso on 58 is very interesting, because Gasly has had, very much an up and down season. He's had a lot of races where he's been really unlucky and has maybe lost out on points unjustly. But Alonso's just on the up and on the up and on the up. Last time out in Russia, where we saw him just absolutely meme the FIA by driving straight through the second corner of the track, which was absolutely hilarious, by the way. I know loads of people had sort of different ideas and found it a little bit contentious and weren't 100% sure that should have been allowed and so on. But for me, he found the loophole. He did the exact right thing. If I'd have spotted that loophole, I'd have done the exact same thing. Gave himself an advantage that was within the rules. You can't blame him for that. He's well within his rights to do that and continue on. I think that's just showing that tenacity, that intelligence that that Alonso has. And I think the Alpine drivers might even catch Gasly, as much as I've loved Gasly this season, and again, Gasly's probably been in my top 3 or 4 drivers this season so far, he does have races where it just doesn't happen. Whereas it feels like at the minute, Alonso is there every single time. It just feels like Alonso has found this rhythm, found this form, and he's a two-time world champion for a reason, right? Like, we probably shouldn't be surprised by this. He has just clicked into gear and now is picking up points consistently. And it's points, 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 points. And I think there's probably a podium in there at some point. 7 races left, there's an opportunity there for Alpine to come out one weekend, possibly even Turkey. They're really good in FP1, and they were on the harder and medium compound tyre compared to everybody else on the softs, and they were still in the top 10 comfortably. So they do look really, really good this weekend, and I think they'll have really good race pace, the Alpines. But Alonso catching Gasly, I think it might be done for Gasly. It might be done for Gasly. I think Gasly struggles. Ocon and Alonso are on the up. I think Alonso definitely takes over Gasly for me at some point this season. And Ocon, it could happen. It could happen. But I'd hope it wouldn't. 21 points. 21 points is a considerable amount of points over the course of 7 races, but I wouldn't put it past Ocon or Alonso to be able to catch and get in front of Gasly. It's a big gap to jump for Ocon, slightly smaller for Alonso. Alonso could do it in maybe 2 or 3 races. Ocon, it might be like coming down to the final race of the season. Him and Gasly, whoever finishes higher above those, out of those 2 in the race, gets the higher position in the Drivers' Championship. And I think that'd be really disappointing for Gasly, because I do think he could finish outside that top 10 in the Drivers' Championship. Through no real fault of his own, he's had a lot of races where he's been very, very unlucky and just hasn't fallen his way. But sometimes that's the breaks in Formula One, and that's sort of the way it is. Is there anybody else? Sonoda, I guess we could talk about as well, just while we're on the Drivers' Championship still. Sonoda, like, Williams look like they could be a midfield team by the end of the season, because it looks like Russell might get in and amongst it. I think even Stroll has to be looking behind him a little bit. Only 8 points ahead of Russell at this point, and Russell just seems to, again, be one of those drivers that is just continually turning up in the points over the course of this sort of second half of the season since the summer break. So Stroll and Sonoda probably need to be looking behind them at Russell as well. But Sonoda, for me, just really, really difficult to fathom what's gone wrong for him at AlphaTauri. Like, I know we're comparing him to Gasly, and as I said, Gasly's been really good this season, and has been quite unlucky. Sonoda just doesn't seem like it's going to work. It doesn't seem like it's going to click anytime soon, does it? And it's again been this continual sort of drudge of Sonoda not quite being there. Oh, I've just noticed some stuff coming through in the chat. Next year is hopefully going to be closer in the Constructors' Championship rather than 2 in the first battle. I really hope so. I hope, we can get like 3 or 4 teams in and amongst it. I've got a video about it coming out very soon, my sort of 2022 predictions and so on. But I thought, if McLaren keep taking steps forward, Ferrari have committed a lot of time and effort into 2022 already, whilst Red Bull and Mercedes have sort of still been battling it out this year. We've got Aston Martin, are going to be their second year of Aston Martin. Vettel's going to have had a year to sort of help them out with this new era of Formula One. Similar, you could say, with Williams, brand new team, brand new style of driving as well. Albon coming in, which is really exciting for them. I think it could be very close next year. So very much looking forward to my predictions video on that, and still sort of putting together my final thoughts on 2022, just looking at this year so far and the progression that the teams have been able to make. Danny Rick should score points this weekend, and Carlos might not. Yeah, that's what I mean. Daniel Ricciardo definitely should score points this weekend. I think in the last 2 races, he's been the best scoring driver. He's picked up 39 points because of that win and Russia. So he's been really, really good as Daniel Ricciardo, and I'm hoping he can just continue that progression and pick up even more points. And that's what I mean. Ferrari need to be worried. Like, Daniel Ricciardo, who everybody has been talking about having a bad season, is now right on the tail of both of those Ferraris. Good shout out the last video. No worries, bravo, Johnny. Thank you. Appreciate it. The last video was good. It's doing well, actually, on the channel. I'm glad it sort of clicked with people. I didn't know whether people would be that interested in the fact that Honda have upgraded their engine. but I was interested in it, so I made a video on it, which is basically how it goes. Ain't over until the fat lady sings. Gasly will be right up there in the end. I really hope so. Like, I'm a big Gasly fan. As people know, the sort of main drivers I sort of watch religiously and hope to do well. And Norris, Gasly, those guys. And Sainz as well, I absolutely adore. But I really hope Gasly can be in there. But I'm just worried that this AlphaTauri team, you know, it's not quite gone the way that they wanted in like the last, you could argue, maybe 5 or 6 races. Hasn't really gone the way that they'd have wanted, and it is getting to the crunch time in the season, and Alpine are just looking quicker and quicker and quicker. If the rain comes on Sunday, we might get a completely different story again. Yeah, you're right. I don't know whether I love or hate rain at this moment in time. Like, Spa and Russia kind of make me despise rain in Formula One, which doesn't feel right, because they've been the best races are rain races. And I did that video on Hamilton's 100 wins and sort of looking back over my favorite moments in Hamilton's history, and I realized after I'd edited that video that like 4 or 5 of the races that I'd picked out had been wet races that he'd like gone on to win in like an incredible drive in the wet. And I think like that just sort of sticks with you when a Formula One driver does win in the rain. It's just one of those things that just like clicks. Like, I think Ocon, that win for Ocon, we're gonna remember for forever. Like, it's just gonna be one of those things. Can you remember that Hungary race with Hamilton starting on the intermediate tyres all by himself while everyone else went into the pits, and then that Ocon and Vettel battle that went on throughout the whole race? And I think that will just stick with us because it was that mixed conditions. And Russia, right? Russia last time out was an absolute classic. What a race that was. And again, because we had that mixed conditions, because it looked like it was all over. Let's be honest, it looked like Lando Norris was comfortably going to win that race. Suddenly there's some rain. The entire grid flips on its head. We have incident after incident. We have cars bashing into each other left, right, and centre. And suddenly it just mixed into this like unfathomable randomness that the rain brings. And when you win those races, it does just really stand out. So I hope so, but I hope we don't have too much rain. I'd maybe like rain in qualifying and then a dry race. You know, mix up the grid a little bit in qualifying and then dry it up during the race, because I just don't want to see Lando Norris crying again, basically, is how I want to be. Let's pop into the Constructors' Championship. I'm going to talk about that in a second. There's a couple more things in the chat. Opinion on the Red Bull livery. I love that. I think they could have done with taking the yellow off of it. I think just white and red. Like, if they really wanted to go like full Japan, full Honda, they should have just left the white and the red. The yellow at points, like there's some angles, especially from the front. I think that the yellow, although it is sort of like the sun, I guess, because the yellow's on the sort of pod behind. But yeah, the yellow just doesn't quite mix in for me. I think if they'd have just gone purely white and red, we're maybe looking at one of the best liveries of all time. The yellow just kind of, I don't know, detracts something from me. But I'd love to know your opinion on the livery as well, because I do really like it. I do really, really like it. And I think it's because Red Bull's livery never changes. Like, if you look at the Red Bull car that Sebastian Vettel won his titles in, or that David Coulthard drove, 15 years ago, it's pretty much exactly the same livery as we have now. Even though the car looks completely different, the car somehow looks exactly the same because the livery is identical. And I really like when they mix it up. And I do like when teams change up a livery here or there. So I do actually quite like. And Red Bull are quite good at it. Like, I remember their Star Wars livery and enjoying that. I think that was at Monaco a while back. But their Star Wars livery was good. So I do like a one-off livery from Red Bull. They usually do a very good job of it. Wish me luck in my swimming gala. Good luck, mate. Good luck, broski. Let me know what's your swim of choice, and by that, stroke of choice. That's what I mean. What's your stroke of choice? I'm a butterfly man, mainly because it looks chaotic but also elegant at the same time. Like, if you get a butterfly right, cool. You look professional if you can get a butterfly right. Like, absolutely love this channel. Thank you, Rachel. Appreciate it. And also from Katerina. Loving the vibe. Appreciate it. How about ocean blue instead of yellow? Manev, you might be right on it. You might be right on it. Hello, guys. Honestly, I don't like the white. What? I quite like a white livery. I think it looks very clean. But yeah, I suppose the dark Red Bull fonts. I think, you know, the white, the black, and the red would have been really nice. Just like if they'd have blacked out all of their logos, maybe, and kept like the red of the Red Bull, that would have been quite nice. But I found the channel to watch F1 in TV, and I don't know what on earth. Good. Good. Want Lewis to win the championship and make history. Really deserve it, especially looking back at his history. Max can win next year. Yeah, I know what you mean. But at the same time, as much as I'd like Hamilton making history would be really cool, I would quite like to see Max win it. Just because moving into next year, this year where we've got brand new stuff and like a completely mixed grid and anything could happen. Like, have a new world champion, throw that in there. I think it would inspire Hamilton again, a little bit more than maybe if he won this year. I know that, you know, you could say that of any other of the years that he's won, that maybe, you know, next year he'll take a little bit of a step down. Or I suppose it's similar to when like a football team wins a championship. A lot of the time it's very difficult to win it back to back. I imagine like that the mentality that you have to win back to back championships is pretty insane. So possibly, you know, Max Verstappen winning it this year would invoke just that little bit extra in Lewis Hamilton. And, you know, you can't rest on his laurels and just win championship after championship anymore. Hello, Maury, mate. How we doing? And bravo. Red Bull livery with miniature photos from a few years ago. Class. What? With miniature photos? Don't know that one, I don't think. Don't know. Maybe if I saw it, I'd probably remember it. Let's talk about the Constructors' Championship. We talked about the Drivers' Championship quite a lot there. I think the main thing in the Constructors' Championship, again, is that battle for 1 and 2. Mercedes taking a real lead now on Red Bull. Now, I know that those guys up there, you know, in the 300, 400 point bracket, a change of 30 points isn't too big for them. Like, Williams, a change of 30 points would be mind-blowing. Like, they'd either be 0 or on 53. But at the top there, you know, you take or minus 30 points from them, it doesn't have that massive percentage change. But looking at Mercedes and Red Bull, I think, again, maybe Perez needs to buck up his ideas a little bit, because there's only 2 points between Hamilton and Verstappen, but the gap between Perez and Bottas is really what's causing that difference in the constructors. And, you know, if Max Verstappen goes on to win a championship, it's always nice when you get the driver and the constructor win that championship together. It does just seem more of a team thing, right? It's tricky when you have a driver win a championship and a different team win the constructors championship, because it's like, we're really happy for this driver, but we're really happy for this team, but the team are disappointed because their driver didn't win, and the driver's disappointed because the team didn't come out. And yeah, it's a bit of a weird one. So if Red Bull do manage to edge that 30 place gap, I hope that Max Verstappen wins the title too, and it isn't all down to just Perez that sort of made this issue for himself and made the fact that the team have dropped out in the Constructors' Championship. We've also got McLaren just ahead of Ferrari. Again, could go either way between those two. I think McLaren are on the ascendancy, whereas Ferrari are still that, you know, back and forth they've got at the minute, haven't they? Some weekends they're amazing, some weekends they're a bit rubbish, and then that back and forth for Ferrari is really what's going to cost them, especially as Lando Norris has been in fine form, and Daniel Ricciardo's found really good form as well, and has been the highest point scorer in the last few races. So Ferrari need to find something if they're going to get in front of McLaren. I don't think that's going to happen, though. Personally, I think Ferrari are going to finish up 4th. This one's the interesting one. The fact that Alpine are driving away from AlphaTauri. You know, AlphaTauri are right up there, and Gasly was carrying that team to 5th place in the Constructors' Championship. But now it just looks like Alpine are going to drive away with 5th place and come 5th easily. As I said, Alonso and Ocon both look really good right now. And I think both of those drivers, Alonso and Ocon, are going to continue to get points after points after points. And I don't think you can say the same with Gasly and Tsunoda, especially Tsunoda. And if you think 66 of those AlphaTauri points have come from Gasly, that is a big chunk of points that AlphaTauri have got from one driver, and Yuki Tsunoda really dragging his heels. But I think that is how it's going to end. I think that's how it's going to finish. I think Alpine are going to finish 5th. AlphaTauri are going to finish 6th, and Aston Martin are going to finish 7th. I can't see Aston Martin catching AlphaTauri just because I think Gasly is going to be too good. But I can't see AlphaTauri catching Alpine because Alonso and Ocon are excellent, and Tsunoda is really dragging that team backwards. So as much as there is a fight for 5th place, and you know, we talked about that being the midfield category for this year, I think realistically that's pretty much done and dusted. You know, it could all change after Turkey. I could be sitting here, AlphaTauri get a 1-2 and suddenly they're easily in 5th place. But I think generally the consensus is that that's pretty much how it's going to finish. And I think Alpine have consolidated themselves as that 5th place team, and next year Alpine will be looking to break into that top 4 if they possibly can. I think that is a massive task for them if they can, especially because, you know, Williams, Alfa Romeo, Haas have all, you know, decided to take a lot of their time to focus on 2022, so they're going to be hoping to move into that midfield battle. Alpine are going to be hoping to move into the top 4. It's going to be, you know, a lot going on next year, and a lot of teams that are disappointed with not being able to finish where they want to. Moving down to Aston Martin in 7th place. Yeah, again, at one point I was talking about Aston Martin being, you know, 5th place. Can they get 5th place? Can they keep up with Alpine? And now Alpine are nearly double their points. And Alpine have, again, just run away with it. I can't see Aston Martin getting anywhere close to Alpine in these next 7 races. It would take a drive from the gods from Vettel and Stroll. They'd need to like both get a podium finish in the same race or something to try and, you know, flip that points gap. And then we can talk about Williams. Williams picking up 23 points since the summer break. What a finish they have got themselves there. Latifi did get points in Hungary, didn't he? Did get points in Hungary. So not picking up 23 points since summer break, but picking up 23 points overall this season when they were down, dead and buried, and everyone was talking about Williams and Haas being the 2 teams that would get nowhere near the points this season. You know, talking about, can George Russell get a 10th place? And that was a massive story. And I remember making video after video about whether or not George Russell will be able to scrape a 10th place and scrape a point for Williams. 23 of them now. They look really comfortable in the top 10 places. Even Latifi looks really comfortable in the points at this moment in time. When he gets there, when he qualifies really high up, Latifi just looks comfortable at defending and battling off drivers a lot of the time. And Russell just looks phenomenal. Russell's been by far and away one of the best drivers this season. Again, would probably put him in my top 3 with the likes of Lando Norris, probably Pierre Gasly, although Gasly's dropped off a little bit. So I think George Russell and Norris are sort of the 2 standout drivers for me this season. Russell's been amazing. 16 points for Russell at this moment in time. And we're talking about whether or not, you know, Russell could possibly even catch the likes of Tsunoda, the likes of Stroll. And when you're looking at the Constructors' Championship and Williams, they need to double up their points, but I think they could get closer to Aston Martin rather than further away, which is pretty impressive considering how far that gap was between the 2 at the start of the season. Like if you told me that Williams would be battling with Aston Martin on track consistently in the second half of the season from after the first 3 or 4 races, I just wouldn't have believed you, to be honest with you. Like it was very out of the blue and out of this summer break that suddenly Williams have like jumped up and look absolutely wonderful. I was just thinking about how people say Ferrari are very successful in F1, but since Merc dominance, they haven't done a whole lot. Yeah, Ferrari are one of those. They're sort of a sleeping giant at this moment in time, aren't they? They're sort of one of those teams that you got to remember though. When Schumacher moved to Ferrari, it was a very long time. He was at Ferrari. What was it, 3 or 4 years, possibly even more, before he then went on to win world championships with them. So it is one of those things that teams do go through these ebbs and flows. Mercedes have come out of nowhere and just been incredibly dominant. But then before that, it was Red Bull that were incredibly dominant. And then before that, we've got that Michael Schumacher era. Obviously, we've got the Hamilton win in there, Alonso with a couple of wins in there as well. But Ferrari before that, it was what, 5 years on the trot for Mick Schumacher. Sometimes they do just come alive, and yeah, it's been a little while since Ferrari won a championship. Obviously, Kimi Raikkonen, the last Ferrari world champion, but at the same time, it wouldn't. I don't think it would be a shock to the system if Ferrari, stepped back into that top spot, because it's one of those things that if you're a sleeping giant in Formula One, a bit like Williams, right? Williams have dropped down to the bottom, but people of a similar age to my dad. Whenever my dad talks about Williams, he talks about how they were by far and away the best team on the grid, and now they're sort of at the bottom and they're working their way back up. I think Ferrari have done a similar thing. You think back to that last year with Vettel, they dropped all the way down to sixth last year as well. They're now sort of on the rise back up. So whether they'll be able to completely take that rise back up to the top, we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, good point. Whether or not they'll be able to fully make that transition back up to the top of the leaderboard. What do you think of Audi and Porsche? Oof. Who will be the sub team? How will they do? I really would love a couple more teams in Formula One. I know that Alpine are obviously looking for a team that they can supply an engine to, and maybe get a couple of junior drivers in as well. So I think it's good. I think it's really good for the sport. Obviously, I think, what was it, 2025? It will be before they really consider entering and getting a car on the grid. So I'd love to see Audi and Porsche in Formula One, but I'd love to see just two more teams. I think 12 teams is such a lovely sort of amount going into a Formula One season. Although I don't want two teams to come in and be like a Caterham or a HRT or something like that, and they're just sitting at the back of the grid and just causing issues for people, and without ever really batting any sort of competitive car at any point in the season. So if they do come in, I'd be really happy, because I'd love to see a couple more teams and 4 more drivers that we can talk about on the grid, and bring in some youth from F2. There's so many good drivers in F2 at this moment in time. And Formula E, right? We're talking about De Vries, and loads of people linked him to that Williams seat. And he's won F2, he's won Formula E, and there's not a slot for him on the grid in Formula One. Now, that is the standard that you have to have. At this point, you just have to be the absolute best phenomenal driver that you can possibly be to get yourself a seat in Formula One when there's only 20. 24 opens that up a little bit. 24 just gives maybe a few youth drivers an opportunity. I think if a Porsche or an Audi came in, they'd maybe pick up, maybe a young German driver, or some drivers that they can pick up from a junior sort of setup. Maybe Red Bull give them a driver and have a junior in there. Maybe Alpine have a junior in there. Ferrari have a junior in there at some point. It's one of those things that hopefully they can come in and integrate a little bit more of the youth into the sport to begin with, and then start to take steps forwards. Maybe when they become a midfieldy team, they bring in a driver, a little bit like Aston Martin have done with Sebastian Vettel, right? They brought in Stroll. Stroll's very young, bit raw, very talented, was obviously at Williams before. And then they've brought in experience with Vettel. Maybe they'll do a similar sort of thing if Porsche come in. Trying to think who's on the grid that maybe they could snap up, like a Hulkenberg or someone if they wanted to go for experience. But I think maybe they will pick up quite youthful drivers and come into the sport like that. VW as well. Yeah, I forgot about VW. But if Porsche get involved, everyone better beware. Do you think Porsche would be that good? Do you think Porsche would be? I think it will take a good few years for like any new team to really start pushing. Most overrated driver. Everyone talks about underrated drivers. but I think it's interesting. Overrated driver. I think it's really tough to be overrated in Formula One. Because usually, if you're rated, you've done well. Firstly, you're in the top 20 drivers in the entire world, like give or take. Obviously, some of the drivers that are in there for the cash value. But most overrated. I don't even know. I think everyone's rated about where they are. Like, you could argue maybe someone like a Kimi Raikkonen is a little bit overrated, but he is a world champion. But I suppose like he's also getting on a bit, and maybe people expect the Kimi Raikkonen of 10 years ago. But then you say that Alonso's driving better now than he was 10 years ago. So I don't know. Overrated driver. Maybe that's something I need to sit down and properly have a little think about. Possibly Yuki Tsunoda came in with a lot of hype this year. Hasn't really shown anything for me anyway that sort of says, my goodness me, this kid is going to be like the best. Which is what a lot of people were saying when Yuki Tsunoda first came in. And I'm honestly surprised Yuki Tsunoda's staying on for another year, especially when it comes to the fact that he is not really put together a season that I think anyone at Red Bull would be fairly happy with. But hello, Hat, that is a hell of a question, and one that I'm going to have to sit down with. Porsche and Audi have an agreement. It's happening next weekend. Yeah, but they wouldn't. They have an agreement to obviously join, but they wouldn't be on the grid next year, would they? Or would they? I haven't really looked into it. VW is their engine supplier. Oh my god, another engine supplier in Formula One. Do we need another engine supplier? We've already got 4. Five would be a hell of a task that the Formula One teams would have on their hands, just to like regulate 5 different engines. Lost your Overwatch competitive match. Unbelievable. I haven't played Overwatch in a hell of a long time. Jess Kelly, how we doing? Hello. How are we? Where were we? We've done Drivers' Championship. We've done my predictions. We've done FP2 and the track that is called the Ice Rink. So we are now at my predictions. Look at this. The Stream Deck, by the way. I don't know if I've talked about the Elgato Stream Deck because I did at the start. It is one of the best pieces of equipment I've ever made, and like, thank you. I've ever bought, and like, thank you so much for all of the support on the streams, because this has just made my life 1,000 times better. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like, look at this. Predictions, bang, there it is. My predictions for the weekend, and actually, I'm going to get your predictions up from the community tab as well, because I think Manev, I saw you put a little comment in there of your predictions for the weekend. I'll run through mine first. I think when it comes to, Verstappen, I think he's just so good. He's just so good, and especially with Hamilton possibly starting, 11th, 12th, possibly all the way down to 15th, depending on how good or bad his qualifying goes. I think Verstappen's going to win this fairly comfortably. I think it's going to be one of those weekends we look back on and be like, Max Verstappen, this was one of those drives that, if he does become world champion at the end of the season, we're going to look back at this and just be like, yeah, this was one of those drives where he just dominated. Almost a little bit like Vettel, I guess, when Vettel was world champion for those couple of seasons in a row. Was it 2010, 2011? Where he just won everything. Qualified first, drove off, first lap, absolutely blitzed it, and then looked like he coasted for the rest. I think we could possibly see a Verstappen victory similar to that vein of form. Norris, I've gone for second place. And I just think Norris, since the summer break, has been on another level. He has found some form in that McLaren that is just unheard of, unholy. It is just so quick. And yes, you can call me a Lando Norris fanboy. Yeah, I probably am. That is fair enough. I probably am. But I think he's so good. And I think another podium for Lando Norris, especially after missing out on that win in Russia. Not even getting a podium in Russia after dominating that race. Just being so good, so tenacious that entire race. Getting back in front of Carlos Sainz exactly when he needed to. getting those tyres to light up when he needed to, and he needed a few good laps to put himself in a good position moving into the first pit stop, and he did it. It was just that rain that cost him, and I'm hopeful for him this weekend, and I hope that it doesn't rain again and it doesn't cost him more points. So I've gone for Lando Norris second. I think Hamilton might be able to just get himself back up into third place. As I said, I think if he's starting 11th, 12th, he's going to find some roadblocks along the way. He's possibly going to get stuck behind the likes of Vettel, the likes of Alonso, and the likes of Gasly. We saw Gasly last time out in Russia with a wall before it rained, and then they got it completely wrong at AlphaTauri. But I think Hamilton will get stuck in and amongst some drivers along his way up. But I think that Mercedes is just very, very quick. Look, really quick in FP1 and FP2 as well. So I'm quite happy that I went for Hamilton in my top three, because Hamilton just will pick up points. Even though he's dropping that 10 places, he will be in and amongst the points. He'll be in and amongst the top 5, definitely. And I think it'd be a really good drive from him if he can get into the top 2 or 3. So I put him in third because I think he's capable. And the Mercedes is more than capable of getting itself up there, even with some challenges along the way, which I'd imagine he'll have. I've gone for best drive. I've gone for Sergio Perez. Now, Sergio Perez, in that Red Bull, as I've said, this season, it looks like some races, he knows exactly what he's doing. He clicks into gear, and the Red Bull just works for him. And he usually finishes pretty well. If that happens, he's in the top 5. And you'd expect that from him. Maybe I'd have expected a few more podiums from him this season. He's only got the one win as well, but then Bottas hasn't got a win this season either. So it's been one of those seasons where the second driver at the top teams has been just maybe a little bit unlucky when it comes to winning races. And because Hamilton and Verstappen have both been dominant, there hasn't been too many races where Perez or Bottas have been able to sneak a win here or there. So Perez has got a win. I think this weekend he needs, for me, to just show something. Show why Red Bull have got you there. He's so good. He's so experienced. I know he was at Force India, Racing Point, so on, for so long. Obviously, before that, he was at McLaren. He has ability. He has everything you need in Formula One. He's been there and done it, and there's a reason that he's on the grid every single year, and there's a reason that Red Bull picked him when it looked like it was going to be the end of his Formula One career. He's so good. He's so good as Sergio Perez, but I just want to see something from him in Turkey that I'm like, my goodness me, that is the reason Red Bull brought in Sergio Perez. He is just wonderful to watch sometimes. And I want one of those performances from Perez. It looked like it was going to be one of those performances, to be fair, in Russia, where he just went incredibly long on that first stint. The longest I've ever seen anyone go on tyres is Sergio Perez. And I think when he gets that right and when he can get those tyres to just last him for an entire race, Turkey could be one of those races where he does that and it just works for him. I've gone for Ocon wildcard. I thought about putting Alonso in here, to be fair, because I think Alonso is going to pick up a podium at some point this season. And I think Alpine are looking better and better and better. I'm going to wait on the Alonso podium finish, though. There will be an Alonso predicted podium at some point. I don't think it's going to come in Turkey, just because only Hamilton and Sainz are doing engine stuff. And nobody's got any grid penalties or anything like that outside of those two. So I'm going to wait on the Alonso prediction. I'm going to wait on the Alonso podium, but there will be one at some point this season. I'll guarantee that. And I've gone for Tsunoda as my struggle, just because I was looking down the grid. I was like, which drivers are just out of form at this moment in time? Which drivers are just really not showing that they've got any kind of pace? And every single time I look down the Drivers' Championship, it always comes back to Tsunoda for me. Maybe it was just because I properly was into the Tsunoda hype. I was really looking forward to another Red Bull Junior with real hype around him. When a Red Bull Junior comes through, they're usually really good. If you think about it, Vettel and Max Verstappen, Daniel Ricciardo obviously was at Red Bull for a little while as well. We got Gasly come through. We had Danny Kvyat at Red Bull and AlphaTauri for a little while, and he was very good. Like, usually when Red Bull bring in a driver, they're great. Like that is just the way it is. They are absolutely brilliant. And maybe I got into that hype a little bit too much and thought Sonoda was going to be a little bit better than he was. Let's go to Perez and Vettel overrated from Johnny Bravo. I'm not so sure. Vettel, no. Also, I do have a little soft spot for Vettel, to be fair. So can't really go for that. Of the remaining races, what tracks suit each team? Theoretical, that is. Oh, Antonio David, that's great. I hadn't actually thought about it. Might be. I'll prepare something for tomorrow on that. I'll write that down. Which tracks suit which drivers? I like it. I like it. Possibly could be even a video on that. I'll tell you what, Antonio. I'll make a video on it and I'll credit you because that's a great idea. Lando's just turned on God mode from Minev. Yeah, that's true. Actually, Minev, let's go to your predictions. I've put mine up there. Minev's put his predictions on the line. If you want to put your predictions in for the weekend and like obviously save them, save them in. So obviously after the stream, the chat disappears, but on the community tab, it's there forever. So Minev has gone for P1 Verstappen, P2 Bottas. Hello. P3 Perez, P4 Leclerc, and P5 Gasly. And Hamilton will have a spin. Wildcard Alonso. I do like the wildcard Alonso. Best drive Gasly. I like the best drive Gasly. Struggle the weekend Sebastian Vettel. Yeah, Aston Martin. I could see that, to be fair. I could most definitely see that. Wildcard Alonso I like. I'm gonna hold out on the wildcard Alonso. But Valtteri Bottas P2. Valtteri Bottas P2. I don't know. Do I feel that? Can I feel that in my bones? I think just I'm on the Norris train. I'm on the Norris train to the top. Also, no but Gasly in the top 5, but no Ricciardo, no Norris in there from Minev. Does not rate the McLarens this weekend. But I think fair. Lando fans as well, Katarina, love it. Love Lando. Dry, Max Bottas Norris. Wet, Max Norris Lewis. Okay. People are liking Bottas. I just haven't liked Bottas's driving over the past couple of races, if I'm honest. Although he did qualify really high in Russia. Obviously, he's dropped down to the back. Maybe. Dry, Bottas Lewis Perez. See again. Bottas in there. Wet Lewis Max Perez. I think Max wins this race, guys. I don't want to step on anyone's toes, but I think Max wins this race. I think Max Verstappen is going to win this race fairly comfortably. Leclerc looks strong, so yeah, it could be. Yeah, Leclerc does look strong. To be fair, I think Leclerc will finish in the top 5, probably not in the top 3. Top 5, not in top 3, I reckon, for Leclerc. So 4th or 5th finish. And then I'm thinking, maybe even this: Verstappen, Norris, Hamilton, Perez 4th, Leclerc 5th, Ricciardo 6th, and then sort of filling in from there might be a little bit trickier. Although I haven't got Bottas then in my top 6, which feels like an error. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. So this is why, I put out a thing about fantasy Formula 1 yesterday. I was just trying to get a thing, because I don't play fantasy Formula 1, but it's something I'm really interested in getting, into, and possibly even making content on. Because I think it's quite a good talking point, especially if we could get our own league going or something like that. I haven't looked into it massively. I think 2022, I'm going to get into fantasy Formula 1. But now I think about it, it's so hard to pick a set of drivers that you think is going to do so well. Because one thing could just go wrong for one driver and it ruin your entire weekend, wouldn't it? Most of the tracks are Red Bull dominant. What we got left? Brazil, Mexico, USA. Abu Dhabi. Yeah, you're probably right, to be fair. You're probably right, to be fair. I've missed one in there. Oh, Dubai. Yeah, yeah, they are quite Red Bully, aren't they? They're quite cornery, slow speed corners, quite Red Bull heavy. Not so sure about Max winning. The white Red Bulls only go to turn one. No, no, no. I think Max Verstappen wins. The white Red Bull. I do like the livery. It's growing on me again. It's just the yellow. Just the yellow. I'm not 100% sold on. Bottas is unleashed now. Maybe he's going to win a race for himself. I thought he'd win in Russia. Everybody had him winning in Russia. Then obviously he took another engine penalty and just didn't drive very well. Was sort of lucky it rained to finish pretty good points in the end was Bottas, but yeah, it didn't drive well in Russia last weekend at all. So don't know, just not on the Russia, not on the Bottas hype. Sorry. Max will definitely win unless something totally crazy happens. Yep, agreed. I think so too. Stroll, love how he's come on. Alonso to keep it real this weekend. Yeah. I'm debating whether or not I should have put Alonso as a wild card. I was flip flopping between Alonso and Ocon as my wild card. I went for Ocon. I just had a feeling. It would be Ocon. But now I'm worried that this is going to be the Alonso podium weekend. Because it's going to happen. It's going to happen. It's going to come. Alonso's going to get a podium at some point. But whether or not it's this weekend, we will have to see. Shame we missed Canada and Japan. Yeah, it really is. There's a lot of races we missed this season. But next year, 23 races on the calendar. Is a lot. It's going to be a big season, but we're going to be here together all through those 23 races. And it's going to be bedlam because nobody knows what any of the cars are going to be like next year. So it's going to be very interesting. But enough about next year because we've got to worry about this year first. It's incredibly tight in the Drivers' Championship. Anything could happen. And we've got qualifying tomorrow. If you want to join us for qualifying, it is 12:30. I'm going to be live 1 o'clock is when we actually start qualifying. But we'll have a little 30-minute chat, possibly some news from FP3 to go through as well, and possibly anyone else who decides to change their engine or go for a completely different tyre strategy or pick themselves up a penalty or something like that in free practice. We might have to talk about. So half an hour or so before. And a Patreon podcast coming out possibly tomorrow, possibly Sunday. Very close to finishing editing that. Going to get on that now. But yeah, something I wanted to add more. I don't know, add more value to the content for you guys. I know lots of you don't really like how Super Chat works, and that is fair enough. Like YouTube take a huge cut of that, and a lot of you don't appreciate that YouTube. You're effectively tipping YouTube rather than tipping me. Is a big thing. Anyway, so when it comes to Patreon, I'm going to start a Patreon podcast. The podcast first episode, which is a little bit about the background of why I started the channel, what I've done on YouTube before, where I'm from, what I'm up to. All that kind of stuff will be out very, very soon on Patreon. Link in the description down below, as well as my Twitch, as well as Twitter, Instagram, whatever you fancy following, whatever social media platforms your favorite. Get down there, get involved, and make sure you leave us a follow. Also, on the community tab, get your predictions in. Here are my predictions again for you. You know, it's going to be a big weekend. You've got to get your predictions in early. None of these people getting their predictions in after qualifying. That's basically cheating. So make sure you get your predictions in as soon as possible. But we are going to end it there. We're going to have a lovely chat. Apologies for all of the technical difficulties. As I said, we're expanding the horizons of the stream. Like, look at this stream deck that I've managed to, like, it's pretty funny. You know exactly how much I've made every single month from YouTube because I spend every penny of that on a piece of equipment. Like the first month I got paid by YouTube, the second month I got paid by YouTube, stream deck. Like, you know exactly how much. It's one of those things. But yeah, I'm massively appreciative of that. Thank you all so much for watching. I will see you tomorrow.